By hearing the sound of my voice, probably sounds pretty masculine, I'd assume. Because, dudes tend to have deeper voices than women, right? But I am a trans woman, and am, I'm an egg, which means that I'm pre-transition, haven't gone through any voice changing therapy, haven't reached out to Planned Parenthood, haven't gotten any estrogen, haven't even changed the way I dress. I have even told most of my family, right? So I wanted to make this video because there's a lot of people, especially in pop culture communities, ironically, that don't understand trans people or really characters in general. So Giovanna is a character from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, obvious spoilers ahead, who gets a lot of flack in the anime community for being poorly written or for being a Gary Sue type of character where he has no real depth to his writing and he's kind of just getting stronger for the sake of the plot, with ass pulls and no real development. That's stupid. He's probably a better written character than Johnny Joestar. Really? Wait, my goat? My goat from the Netflix show? No, not Johnny Joestar. He still was your fave. Yes, Giorno Giovanna is a better written character than Johnny Joestar. In fact, I'd say he's probably the greatest character that Araki has ever written, at least for JoJo's. I haven't read Bao, so maybe that's the greatest piece of fiction of all time. I don't know. But for the most part, I'm going to be talking about my favorite character from my favorite part in my favorite series of all time. Alright. See the title of the video, see the thumbnail. You may still be confused because even though Giorno was intended to be a woman, and that's a pretty well-known thing for the fandom, and even though parts of his appearance are very feminine, that's not really unique to him. A lot of JoJo characters kind of dress however they want. JoJo's is a very queer, aesthetically, fashionably in general. So it would seem out of place, I guess, to just suggest this, especially when it's not a case like Dragona Joestar, the new character from JoJo Lands, who is blatantly representation for trans people without you having to do any kind of deep thinking about it, right? And so I just want to get into it. This is an idea that I've been thinking about for a while. None of my other real videos have really been doing anything. I haven't uploaded them in so fucking long, but I just lost interest in doing comic dubs or Roblox videos. I wanted to do something that I felt like had purpose. I wanted to talk about literacy. I wanted to talk about looking into what you read and what you watch and actually getting something out of it outside of just seeing what's physically happening with the animation or with the drawings and actually figuring out why it's there and what it's supposed to mean. The curtains aren't blue, right? Or they aren't just blue. I'm an idiot. So, Giorno was intended to be a woman. Most people know this, but here's the full rundown. You have Giorno Giovanna, who obviously is physically a guy, right? By basic standards of what dudes and women look like, he's a dude, right? Araki, Hirohiko Araki, the writer of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, wanted to create a female protagonist for his series, but Shonen Jump, the magazine that promotes Dragon Ball, Jujutsu Kaisen, all the anime that you're probably familiar with, except for something like Berserk, would not let him because Shonen is a manga magazine for teenage boys, and they believed that teenage boys would not be interested in a female protagonist. That was proven right by Part 6. Everyone hates Part 6 because Jolene's a woman, even though it's an amazing part, and it's also maybe just as good as or better than Part 5. Anyways, so instead of just giving up or getting fired, Araki found a workaround by giving his stand, Golden Experience Requiem, the ability to create life, right? And life-giving is pretty well associated with womanhood, So he took a male character, he, him pronouns, and he found a way to work in the themes that he wanted to work in for womanhood, right? And you may be thinking, sure, that makes sense, but that doesn't mean that he's trans. It doesn't mean that he would metaphorically be like symbolism for these people. He's just a feminine guy, right? Let's go through part 5, like mostly in order, but with some branching out, just to point out things for like a bit of a way to think about it, right? Giorno was, born to an absent father, but it's more of a rude joke that people make against trans people and everything. I just thought it was funny to bring up. If we're gonna compare, I'd say early Giorno, so beginning of series and kid Giorno, to an egg, which is the term used to define or describe young. Oh my Google Slides is trying to connect. Sorry about that. It's used to describe young or pre-transition trans people who either due to their financial, social, familial situations cannot transition, or they have not started yet for whatever reason, right? He quickly learned at a young age that he could not seek help from his family, and that is sadly the case for a lot of people. A lot of trans people are closeted because they're deathly afraid and anxious on whether their family would accept them or not. I know me myself, I have problems with that. So it's just under the layer of the trans experience, it works a lot more than trying to frame him as some edgy, edgelord, like, oh, I don't trust people, they don't care, they don't understand. When in reality, it's applying to real world situations and real struggles that people actually go through. His origin isn't basic, it's real. So whenever I hear people saying that, oh, he shows no emotion, it's because he was raised to not. Whether or not his parents were abusive or neglectful, he grew up either due to his own understanding of his environment or his environment not being able to express his emotions to the people around him, and so he isolated himself and became incredibly self-reliant. And then, right, Giorno gets older, becomes a teenager, and he awakens Golden Experience Requiem. Doesn't really matter how that happened, but it'll be important later. But anyways, you have Golden Experience Requiem. Look at how this stand is designed. It is depicted as a humanoid golden ladybug with a noticeable bulge and jockstrap. Look at how Giorno is drawn, and look how he's animated. Look at his design. He went from a black-haired, shy-looking kid to a practically pink dress-wearing, breast-accentuating, uniform-looking, ladybug-covered, braided blonde hair person, right? And again, these aren't really gender-defining traits, if you really want to look into it. But a lot of people early transition, people like mid-transition, they tend to wear things or express themselves in overtly, traditionally feminine ways to make up for the femininity that they were either denied or that they could not have when they were younger. I think one of the biggest parts of transitioning is regret, because or at least many people, regret not doing it sooner, not telling people sooner, or not doing things sooner, because there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of dysphoria when you look in the mirror and you see your own body and it doesn't feel like you. It's not who you are on the inside. being reflected on the outside, and so you fight back aggressively. So you if you're a trans man, you wear more generally masculine things, or you try to grow out a beard, or if you're a woman, you try to, you make yourself look more dainty. You when you wear skirts, you pull them up to accentuate your hips. It's to make up for that, I guess, perceived failing, or those problem areas that make you feel dysphoric, and it is a very negative and like self-consuming way of thinking, because you become obsessed with passing or looking feminine to other people, or other people think of you, and it's on top of what a person normally goes through when they're like Giorno's age, which is 15, right? Surprisingly, he's 15 throughout the entirety of part 5, which is crazy, because he becomes the leader of a gang at that age. But anyways, it's on top of the normal social struggles and the anxiety that people go through. It adds on an additional layer that most people can't relate to. So unless you're lucky enough to have a community or to know people around you who are going through what you're going through, you don't have anyone. And so all you have is yourself. Which is why Giorno is so self-reliant, He doesn't let anyone put barriers on him. When Leaky Eye Luca comes up to him, he tries to like enforce superiority, both physically and socially. He's like, this is my job. We can't do what I'm doing. It's not your right. I gotta stop you, right? And we all know how Leaky Eye Luca wound up and how Bruno found him. So, and on top of that, right? You take what stands are. Stands are expressions of your soul, right? If you're familiar with part 5, there's another character, Panicotta Fugo, whose stand, Purple Haze, is a reflection of his repressed rage, right? And so what I'm getting at is that Golden Experience is a repression of Giorno, or is a representation of Giorno's repressed femininity. He's a ladybug. He's constantly reminded of the fact that he has a male body, even though he wishes he didn't. And his soul, his mind demands that he didn't. Right? If we consider Giorno Giovanna to be an egg, right, which I do, I've already made that clear, then Golden Experience is the shell of that egg. Even in how he's designed, how Requiem appears later, he is the egg-shell that is, while it allows him to express femininity, it locks him into the reality of his given body at birth, his assigned gender at birth, and he can't do anything about that, right? It's when Bruno comes in, right? Oh, sorry. No, let's get into Bruno later. I want to take a bit more time to talk about this and Golden Experience's abilities, right? Life creation takes a lifeless object and it transforms it into a beautifully living creature, right? When you attack one of these creatures, it reflects all of the damage back onto you, scales to you. For palette scaling reasons, it's like really cool or whatever. It's like awesome to see in fights, but never really that used. Anyway, what does that mean in context? Because the government gets away with erasure and genocide and transgender women all the time. So it's not really true that attacking a trans woman is going to get you in trouble. Attacking a trans man is going to get you in trouble because the government kind of supports it. So I think it's not really a one-to-one part of this metaphor. Attacking the creatures represents the social demonization of queer culture and having a negative impact on society itself. Pop culture was built by queer people and allies, right? I don't think I need to explain how the fashion, horror movie, and superhero and music industries have all been partially carried on the backs of the LGBTQ community. It's comparable to the amount of work, the amount of legwork that African Americans have provided for the general culture of this country, right? when you try to strip queerness or blackness or quote-unquote wokeness out of media, you strip it of its origins and its identity. It hurts the artists, which inevitably hurts the art to give you a lesser, more shallow product. If that doesn't really make sense, think of it as Giorno being an overprotective mother, or one who raises its creations with the tools to defend themselves and keeps themselves safe. All the other trans people that I know, not many, don't know any people in real life, are incredibly protective of other eggs or early transition people. It's an incredibly vulnerable part of your life, and you need that protection. It could serve as representation of the community's resilience. Let's go back a little bit, right? To Giorno as a child, right? Let's go back all the way to when I had little baby Giorno on screen, and he was so small that he only needed one popcorn. Okay? He didn't fit in as a child. Frankly, we only see him as a young kid and 15 years old, so it's not a perfect lens to view his development from. However, you can add the context I've already provided. Remember that gender dysphoria makes it almost impossible to socialize or relate to other people. It keeps you in your head and it tortures you with negative thoughts. Only when a woman is allowed to be herself, or she sees that her dreams are possible, she can grow the confidence to become one. You know? He witnesses a gangster show loyalty, something his parents never gave him, something none of his classmates ever gave him, something he never had. And from that moment on, he decided that he would become a star, the same way I looked at Cassandra Peterson and decided that I wanted to become a woman. Anyway, so JoJo awakens golden experience. He grows his hair out, braids it, changes from dark black to a golden blonde, begins to wear feminine clothing. Same I was just describing, that baby trans era where you're wearing more feminine clothing to make up for that lack of femininity that you had when you were younger. He gains confidence. He takes out Leaky Eye Luca. He's able to express himself in front of Koichi, in front of other people. He's charismatic. People like him in Italy, in Napoli, right? Then we get to Bruno. Remember, Bruno goes after Giorno because he killed Leaky Eye Luca, and Bruno worked with him. So now Passione, the gang, is sending him to figure out what's going on, right? The investigation on the train is uncomfortably similar to how predatory and disgusting transvestigation is. He licks him, he forces fingers into his mouth, he violates him to answer questions that did not require that level of interrogation. All in honor of a man that Bruno did not know was secretly selling drugs to children. Passione manipulated Bruno into enabling and destroying the very things he swore to protect, the same way the government tries to convince you that queer people are at all a danger to children, which is, unsurprisingly, bullshit propaganda. When Bruno and Giorno come to words, the former immediately stands behind him and realizes that they want the same thing, right? You got Giorno and you have Bruno, and he's like, I'm gonna be a gang star, right? Bruno's like, how are you gonna do that, right? And Giorno's like, I'm gonna kill the boss, and I'm going to prevent children from being indoctrinated into unhealthy lifestyles where they'll be inevitably forced into the one you and I have, right? Bruno's like, oh my god, that's awesome. I had no idea the entire time I was working for a child trafficking and drug ring. Let's kill the boss together. And then they become friends, best friends in fact. Bruno becomes a father and mother figure for Giorno, like he has for the rest of his gang. Alright. So then, Bruno introduces Giorno to Mista, right? Have him right here. Then he's introduced to Narancia, him right here. And then he's introduced to Abbacchio. These three characters, like any good main cast, all have ties to and perceive the main character differently, right? First, you have, Mista, who is inarguably Giorno's love interest. You know, you can be stupid and you can be homophobic, but it is abundantly clear that these two are being shipped by Araki, right? Not only are they placed into several romantic and intimate positions, Narancia himself, who knows Mista and knows Giorno, interprets those situations as sexual. They're together. That's not debatable, right? That's not something that I'm willing to view as interpretable, or open to interpretation. I mean, right? So then you have Narancia. Narancia is older than Giorno. However, he looks younger and is often mistaken for a woman by new viewers. He's depicted with traditionally feminine features and personality traits. He matches that Japanese writing style of the tsundere archetype. I really don't like the fact that I said that out loud, but I did. This will be important later. Hopefully you can see where I'm going with this, but we'll get there. Right, and then you have Leone Bacchio, who is a transphobe. Yeah, he is, literally. He's ex-law enforcement, and he has a resentment towards Giorno because he sees him as unworthy, pretentious, and not to be trusted, based on his confusing desires and his kind of a goal that he can't understand from his position. Because for Bacchio, he's only a gangster because it's the only path in life he has. Giorno chooses to be a gangster because he was inspired to, and he's sacrificing temporary uncomfortability for a goal of happiness and joy that Bacchio just doesn't get. He doesn't understand why Giorno is the way that he is, and so he doesn't trust him, and he resents him. All right. However, that's kind of where their dynamic falls off. Sure, he learns to trust Giorno and they become closer, but it's especially around the time that happens, there isn't a lot of time for that relationship to develop and for there to be a lot of interactions between these two characters. Right. Through Vento Rayo and Golden Wind, if you're a newer fan, I guess. Saying that I didn't grow up with Golden Wind. I just like being the anti-LARP guy, you're calling him Sound Man. You haven't even read the manga. How do you know his name is Sound Man? I'm pretentious. I'm a purist. I can't help it, right? So throughout Golden Wind, right? The game fights many metaphors for the experiences of womanhood and the experiences of queer people, right? If you're familiar with Babyface, that is kinda clearly the child of a disgusting sexual assault, which the gang has to deal with. The mother dies from it, I believe, and it's very, very uncomfortable to watch the creation of that stand, which is intentional on Araki's part, but it's kinda right there how Passione, aka the government and society, doesn't care about women at all, not just trans women, just women to begin with, and how they kind of just do whatever they want to anyone, and it's disgusting. It's horrific. Ties into the horror aspects or the horror origins of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and it's not really talked about that much. Chocolata and Sekko represent corrupt medical systems. Asylums would abduct imperfect women and torture them to the point of insanity and madness as an excuse to push the agenda that they need to do it, or they have the moral right to. Kind of like how Chocolata kind of messed up Sekko and turned him into a pet for fun. Kind of like how the government is currently putting people in prisons and detransitioning them to try and make the claim that it's a mental illness that can be fixed or gotten rid of, even though most mental illnesses can't be gotten rid of anyways. So, Talking Mouth, which is just the stand that, makes you lie. I forgot who the two guys were with the shark and the Talking Mouth. It's been a hot minute. This is kind of just a rant video. Represents how it feels to be forced to lie constantly to the people around you and the people that you care about, because you don't feel like you have the option to tell the truth, right? And the gang is introduced to Trishuna, the boss's daughter, right? A cis woman, cis girl. These are like children, by the way. It's been very imperative to part 5. These are like these are like young teenagers, right? At least Giorno and Trish are 15, right? She's a girl who's had her life ripped from her, preventing her from becoming the person she needs to be, until she awoke her stand while fighting with the gang. Doesn't that sound familiar? Now we get to talk about the good part. Silver Chariot Requiem. I don't have a picture of Silver Chariot Requiem, I just forgot to get one. Or Silver Chariot, if you actually know what Requiem means and you like being pretentious. I do. Swaps people's bodies. Just gonna leave that there. Silver Chariot Requiem, or Silver Chariot, swaps people's bodies. Trish and Mista's body switch. Bruno and Diavolo's body switch. Doppio fucking dies. That sucks, but he was gonna die. He's the right hand man. Come on, right? But would you look at that? That leaves 2 characters, Giorno and Narancia, right? They swap bodies. Giorno is now traditionally a woman, right? He looks like a woman. He passes, right? But this doesn't make his dream realized. It doesn't change anything. Binary trans people start out on the assumption that they need to pass, they need to look and feel like a cis person to truly be their true gender. But as you go, as you realize who you are, at least internally, passing doesn't matter. It feels good. You get euphoria when someone recognizes you as who you are, but that's validation from other people, and you're transitioning for yourself, not for society, in most cases. And so Giorno chooses to re-enter his own body when Narancia dies. The second the opportunity presents itself the second as the opportunity presents itself. I got lost in my script. Let me start over. And Giorno chooses to re-enter his own body when the opportunity presents itself, because perceived femininity is not what makes him a woman. She was one the entire time. The arrow leaves the hands of Silver Chariot, and Diavolo attempts to invalidate her. He claims that she's not worthy, that only he, someone who obviously profited from his lack of humanity and the rejection of himself, only he who desires to be perceived how he wishes is worthy of success. But still, Giorno is granted the arrow. Why? Fate in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a Rocky's will. It's the plot. It's what the narrator, it's what the writer needs to happen. It's what they make happen through the characters and through the events of the story. Right. It's why Dio was destined for evil. It's why the Joestars were granted stands to combat him. It's why Kira was eventually caught by soon-to-be police officer Josuke Higashikata after evading police for decades. It's the system that Pucci manipulated for him to kill the main characters of Part 6, and it's the system that rebelled to let Emporio kill him. Love persists and everything lives. Diavolo doesn't get to decide whether or not anyone else is worthy of greatness, especially when he devoted his life pulling strings to get to the top unnaturally, denying fate, denying the many of times that he should have died because his ability allows him to just turn a blind eye to danger or to problems or to anything that he doesn't want to come to pass. Giorno was a woman. She would be whether or not she was born one, because womanhood is not childbirth, it's struggle. It's not speaking about your issues, it's silent suffering. However, it's still endurance. It's power and rebellion. It's granting love and life to everyone around you. It's something that Bruno taught her. And so when she stabs Golden Experience with the arrow, the egg cracks. And then we get the design for Golden Experience Requiem. Golden Experience Requiem does not have a bulge. Golden Experience Requiem lets Giorno's hair down. Golden Experience Requiem has a heart on its chest resembling breasts. Golden Experience Requiem does not have stand stats because it doesn't abide by the conventional systems used to understand abilities. It rejects the standard ideas of what a stand is. And so Giorno rejects the standard ideas of what a man is and what a woman is. He's awakened not just his ability, but himself, right? And that's really what I wanted to get down to at the end of the video. Just because you don't understand something, or you don't want something to be the case, it doesn't change, right? You could not want to have been born a man. You're still not cis. I mean, you're still, as a trans person, you're still not. You were still born a man. You were still assigned male at birth. Same for trans men too, or non-binary people, or gender fluid people. This is what happened. You can't get rid of that. You can't just pretend that it's not real. It's a part of who you are. It's the reason why you even don't want to be. Why you even want to be cis is because you hate that part of you. But you can't hate who you are if you want to move on. You have to acknowledge that you are you, and no one else but you can decide what that means, whether that be about gender, whether that be about your sexuality, whether that be about your fashion, whether that be about your interests. Those are not created with dead set physical rules that bind you, right? So many people, they look at a person who's mixed with, let's say their parents are black and Asian, right? That person, to a lot of people, is just black. If you look at someone who's white and Asian, that person, in a lot of circles, will be considered Asian, but is just white. Or if they pass as Asian, or if they look a little less, they have a lot of less skin, they'll look like the other thing, and then immediately oh, you're just Asian, or oh, you're just black, or oh, you're just white, or oh, you're just blank. I'm a mixed person, so I have very, very light skin. I had way lighter skin when I was younger, but I have generally black lips. I have I have blacker hair if we consider what the average black person looks like. And so a lot of the time I've been pinholed into being white, being light skinned, or being black. But those aren't enough of descriptors. Those are just physical traits. That's genetic code. It doesn't mean anything. Sure, it means things socially. Sure, I'm more likely to get, brutalized by a cop because my lips are bigger than his. But my person, my soul, who I am, is not just invalidated or validated because I am the way that I look, or because I was born the way that I was born, I guess. And so when you look at Giorno Giovanna, right, he, to a lot of people, is just a bland, depthless, I guess shallow, shonen main character, right, who just happens to have an overpowered ability just for the sake of having it, instead of actually having anything behind it, or any kind of metaphors, or any kind of analogies, or anything. It's just, he's bland, he's Sung Jin Woo, he's boring, boo, move on to Johnny. I want to see some basic bad to good development. All right, where's my very clear and obvious shoved in my face metaphor about Tusk and the development of human. I love Johnny, by the way. I'm not shitting on Johnny. He's one of my favorite Joe stars of all time. He's amazing. But like, y'all really gotta shut up about him, right? You have to look into the things that you read. You can't not, because that's why a lot of people, that's why a lot of cops put the Punisher logo on their car. Punisher doesn't like cops. He hates them. But these people can't think critically. They can't look into the context or even the words on the page and pull anything out of it outside of the pictures, outside of like the action on the screen. If the anime community was a lot more thorough in how they looked at media, or if they were smarter, this wouldn't be that crazy of a take. I don't think this wouldn't be like this. I think someone probably would have said it before me, or someone would have came up with it, or someone would have said something different. You know, there's so much, I guess, ignorance when it comes to media in general. If you look at a character like Superman, sure, he is a character that's capable of being this smiling, bright symbol of hope. And sure, he's also a character that's being, you know, a symbol of, he's a warrior. He fights, he gets angry, he has physical emotions. But those two aren't mutually exclusive. You can be a Bastion who doesn't show fear. You can be like always smiling, but you can still have emotions, right? You can still be a person. There isn't like a set of features or a set of traits that lock people into these imaginary walls that they'll convince you exist but aren't there, right? Jodio Joestar is the main character of the current and last part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, JoJo Lands, right? He probably has antisocial personality disorder, and he may be a sociopath. However, he's written like the average teenager right now. Outside of his origins, outside of a few little details, he's no different than the average person, the average teenager who is selling drugs and who is out on the street and who is committing crimes, because someone who is different from you is still a person, right? Sure, he's a scumbag. Sure, he's a gangster. He's morally and legally wrong, but he's still a human being, right? And there's this demonization of queer people when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to gender identity, when it comes to anything nowadays. They're transvestigating JFK on Twitter, where it's just like, oh, did you see what they were doing to the transes, or to me myself as a trans, or stop. You're a trans person. All it is a descriptor. It's an important descriptor and shows like a huge part of your identity and who you are and what you've been through, but it's not something that completely defines you, right? You can't just slap on simplistic labels like boring or shallow without knowing what you're talking about. So many people in the anime community are just like, yeah, AOT has better depth than Naruto. And they don't even know what depth means. They don't know what they're talking about. They can't bring up any examples. They can't speak to the actual themes of what AOT is talking about. All they say is like, oh, they're talking about freedom. What about it? What about the dream speaks to freedom or the problems with freedom, right? You look at you look at One Piece, right? One Piece is very straightforward in how it conveys its ideas. It's very like, it's a bunch of pirates fighting the world government. You can figure out that it's a left-leaning manga. Most manga are, but like you can figure it out, right? Somehow there's a lot of people on the internet, because the internet is full of the worst takes ever, whether it be rage bait or people who again can't critically think and ask ChatGPT how to tie their shoes, who believe that it's not this left-leaning anti-government storyline, you know? And it's just, you're not a fan of this thing. You can say that you're a fan of this character or of this property or of this story, but it's actively antagonizing everything you believe in. The writer does not fuck with you. And he is actively creating these popular, he or she or they is creating these incredibly popular pieces of media that resonate with people's souls to reject what you're pushing onto people. Right? Giorno Joestar, Jodio's brother, right, is a second attempt at Giorno's situation. It is a even more clear metaphor because people refuse to think clearly and think critically, and so Araki had to make it even more straight up to where it's just stated that Giorno got surgery, right? The reasons being are like, you know, interpreted that she's trans, but it's still right there and you can't ignore it, right? And it's just, he wouldn't have to do that, or games wouldn't have to do the focus end thing where they over-explain every single detail of a story or of a gameplay mechanic if people actually wanted to interact with the media that they consume. I know that consuming media is like a term that like it's like, oh, it's overbloated, it doesn't really make too much sense like word-wise, but it's the only way I can really describe it. People don't rate anymore, right? People skip the cutscenes of story games for some reason, and then they go on the internet and say the story's bad. There was an entire, like, hate war on Insomniac Games for Spider-Man 2 because people thought that Peter Parker got taken out by a fridge, and if you watch the cutscene, he got punched in the gut by someone 3 times his size. He's not going to be able to lift a fridge after that. That's not how bodies work. Use your brain. Just use it. It's not that hard. You can figure it out. And if you can't, right? The whole point of English class, right, is learning what to do when you don't understand a story, using context clues and using what the story gives you and what you can understand to look back and figure it out for yourself. Jujutsu Kaisen is the biggest example of this. I'm only using JoJo because I am just more familiar with it and it's my favorite anime of all time, so it's like it's my home turf, right? But I love JK too. It's like, you know, really, really cool. I love that manga. Love the ending. Screw you guys. Anyways, people on the internet will tell you, people in real life too. I've had this conversation with people in real life. Crazy people, by the way. Will tell you that Yuji Itadori cannot land a black flash at will. Do you want to know why they say that? They say that because in the manga, the narrator says that it's not possible. However, they say that it's not possible while quoting an in-story character. And in-story characters can be wrong. I just went on a whole thing about how I was saying that Diavolo was wrong and he could not determine whether or not Giorno or anyone else was worthy of the arrow, especially in this situation, but just it was not true. And so the narration was satirically or ironically bringing that up while Yuji was shown to be doing it intentionally and landing a black flash on purpose. But if you ask the Jujutsu Kaisen fanbase, actually, he can't do that because the narrator said so. Use your brain. Trust me, it is so much more fun when you're reading something, when you're watching something, when you actually give it the time of day to understand what's going on. Because if you ever look at like the Jujutsu folk Reddit or the Discord or just general TikTok discussion of that show, oh my god, it is full of the slander wars and the agendas. None of them are based on any truth. They're just crazy talk. There's people who will tell you that the writer of that series is not a reasonable, like, point of evidence for the series. He wrote it. He knows exactly what he's talking about. He knows. He designed the whole thing. If your theory needs to ignore the basic rules or the actual plot itself, it's not a theory. It's an alternate universe you come up with in your own head, right? And like, back to the point at hand, or like the main theory of this video, right? You cannot agree with me. You can think that Giorno is cis. You cannot agree with any of the points that I've made. But because the character was designed to be open for interpretation, so what? Like, you may think different, and we may argue, right? But like, it doesn't make me any less right than you are. You know? There's no rule that says a character has to be interpreted in this way unless there's deliberate signs, right? So there's deliberate signs that Jotaro Kujo in part 3 is secretly a like big softie, and he cares about the people like around him so much, he just doesn't show it. That's something that you could pick up on very easily with minimal looking into it in part 3, and then it's made apparent in part 2 with how much he cares for Koichi and how he puts himself on the front lines in front of Yosuke and Okuyasu, and it's stated in part 6 that his family and his friends are his weakness by Pucci before he's killed. It's abundantly clear, right? Giorno is not a character like that. And just because everything about him isn't direct and obvious, it doesn't mean that it isn't there. Right? There's people, I guess, like, more people in real life, internet-wise, who throw off, like, let's say Dragon Ball, because Goku's character is perceived to be incredibly simplistic and lacking emotional depth or development. That's not possible. The story doesn't happen the way it happens without Goku's development. That's just not a point you can argue. And these same people love Vegeta. Do you want to know why they love Vegeta? It's because whenever he develops, or whenever he thinks something, or whenever there's something that happens with him, he screams it out loud completely towards the enemy. He just says it. It's in the subtitles. There's no room for interpretation. It's just there. And so they come to expect that every character, when they develop, or when they have a moment, or when they have an arc, it will be directly spelled out for them, when that's just not the case. Right? The curtains aren't just blue. You actually have to read to understand, not read to finish, before you make an assessment, or you make a take, or anything. And if you do not care, and if you are just reading to finish, or you're reading for just sole entertainment with just the basic animation or other stuff like that, that's also cool. You just shouldn't be making takes about the writing when you weren't paying attention to it intentionally. Like, it's not your place. It's not you weren't like paying attention to the math in class and you're telling the teacher that it doesn't make sense. It's right there. The solution is right there in front of you, but you just can't figure it out. Not because you're incapable, not because you're stupid, but because you refuse to. And it's led to so much, I guess, puritanism over what fiction is real fiction. Someone will look at you and go, no, I don't read comic books, that's for children. Comic books haven't been for children since maybe the 90s. And initially they weren't for children either. Like the 70s to the 80s is like the child marketing era of comics. At least the 80s is kind of crazy too, but those were Long Halloween and stuff like that were like different than the average. And now comics are kind of like it's for everyone, but like they're not for kids. And if they are, they're really good education for children. Like, they teach important shit, right? Shit that adults don't know and that they need to be taught. Like, let's take Transformers, for example. Sentience and autonomy is the right of all sentient beings. There's people who don't know that. It's crazy to me. How, like, it's absolutely insane that it's right there, right? Something isn't less valuable because it's not traditional. When an animated movie comes out, right, regardless or not of whether it's made for kids, whether it's made for adults, it's a movie, right? To assume that, like, something that's made for an audience that isn't yourself is not for you is very interesting to me. Because how do you get involved with new things? If you don't like Pokemon, right? And then Pal World comes out, new game that's a lot like Pokemon, but with a very different, with like different gameplay. You know, you have guns, you build areas, but the very similar like gameplay aesthetics you would see in Pokemon with the little monsters. You put them in balls, something like that. You're like, oh, I don't like Pokemon, I'm not gonna play it. How do you know? Like, how do you know that just because you don't like Pokemon, you're not gonna like this? They're not the same game. Even in the same series, it's like, oh, Pokemon's made for kids, so I don't even care if they're like shooting them with like, you know, with them M1 granted. It's not from, you don't know. You don't know, right? And like, it's why LARPing has become such a crazy. I guess if a word could be flanderized, LARPing is one of the flanderized words, where like people just say shit, right? They say stuff with such a level of required, like, ignorance. Like, you could not make those takes realistically and unironically without having just not watched the show. You would need to have ignored every single frame of the movie for you to say that Superman 2025 was an anti-immigrant film, or that it was pro-Israel. You would need to have just not seen it. Like, it's we're in like a crisis right now where just nobody reads. Everyone takes everything they hear on the internet at face value, and it's what George Orwell was warning us about. But like, it's not a difficult skill. Sure, writing is difficult. Writing is insanely difficult. I'm a writer myself. It's hard, especially with prose and grammar. It's annoying and it's tedious, but it's necessary to make the art. It's the same for learning fundamentals of drawing in order to break them. It's something you have to learn. But reading is just a pattern-seeking brain, right? Johnny goes to the store to bring flowers, to buy flowers for his wife every single day, right? Then a tsunami hits the town. Johnny's alive. He passes by the store and he doesn't buy flowers. What do you think happened? They get a divorce? Did Johnny's wife say, I don't like flowers, please stop bringing me flowers? She died. The tsunami took her. And so it's basic context clues. You learn this in elementary school. You learn this like late elementary, like 5th grade. You learn this in middle school a lot. They have classes about it. And these aren't difficult classes. They just require you to care, right? I'm not expecting you to like read Shakespeare and understand the words enough or care enough to want to figure it out. I'm not saying you have to I'm not telling you have to watch JoJo's and you have to interpret it the way that I do, and you have to think incredibly critically and overthink every single aspect of every single scene. But like, what are you doing if you're going onto the internet and you're saying, oh, actually Jolene is the worst Joestar because she lost. She fought God. Actually, I think that I think personally that JoJoline is bad because Toru sucks. But Wonder Review is very cool though. I like Wonder Review, but Toru sucks. It's the same character. It's the same character. It's the same character. It's the same character. I think if you gave me the Death Note, bro, I'd fix everything. The entire point of the show is no, you wouldn't. I get that Light's crazy, but you would become crazy with the Death Note. That's the entire point of the show. Right? And if you have counter arguments, say them. And when you say them, point out where in the actual story that would come from. Like, it's like, to finish off this video, I want to talk about the biggest misconception when it comes to Giorno's character, and that's power scaling, right? Like I said at the start of the video, people view him as just a Gary Sue, very like, you know, he's just strong and he has no character, right? And they think that Golden Experience Requiem is a stand that when it kills you, it puts you into an infinite death loop. Just because they saw that's what happened to Diavolo, even though they didn't see that. But they just assume that it is. You know, they're misinterpreting the clues, right? Silver Chariot Requiem was taking the arrow away from Diavolo because Polnareff did not want Diavolo to have the arrow when Silver Chariot Requiem was created, right? He wasn't taking it to Jotaro. That doesn't make any sense in the context of the scene. He was taking it away from Diavolo, right? And so, because Diavolo is he has so much rage and he just attacks everything, that he destroys things that he doesn't like, right? Or that could possibly put him in a bad position, where he gets rid of them or he ignores them. The ability makes it so whenever you attack Silver Chariot, you get attacked back with your own ability, right? There's no brute forcing Silver Chariot Requiem, or at least to get the stand out of its hand, right? It's to keep Diavolo specifically away from the arrow, right? And so, when Giorno inherits that specific will to keep Diavolo away from the arrow, Golden Experience Requiem forms with the sub-ability to hard counter the person that he wants away from the arrow, right? Because there's no logical reasoning behind the death loop when you actually think about it. The reason why Diavolo is knocked out and then he experiences multiple different deaths again and again and again is because his character got to where he was by bypassing fate and evading death again and again and again. He's not being put through an infinite death loop. He's suffering for every single time that he's evaded death, which is a lot, right? Fate in JoJo's kind of imagine there's a cup on that's tipping off a table, and you walk over and the cup falls on your foot, right? If you were to imagine that, if you were to get a premonition or you have epitaph and you saw that happening earlier and you saw the cup landing on your foot, you'd not walk over there, or you'd push the cup along, or you'd walk anyway, right? You wouldn't let that happen, right? But fate kind of doesn't like it when you do that too much, and Diavolo has done that for his entire life. So imagine, right, that a day later another cup falls on your foot. Not the same one. You still escaped that initial circumstance, but a different cup falls on your foot because that situation was already fated to happen. But now it breaks your toe because it was a Stanley Cup. It's the same logic behind Wonder Review. It's calamity coming to you, you know, just increased, or exponentially increased, right? Golden Experience Requiem amplified all the moments where he evaded death or he used his ability, which he spammed, by the way. He spammed the fuck out of a time skip. Crazy motherfucker. His usage of King Crimson has got to be on par with Part 3 Diavolo. He put a switch on his stand. You've watched the Bruno fight, he's just teleporting around constantly. Right. And so it's undoing the usage of his stand and undoing everything he's done to deny or ignore fate. Right? And so he dies again and again and again, not because it has some arbitrary ability with no connection to Diavolo or no connection to the arrow, or why Polnareff created his own created Requiem unintentionally to just create a time loop. He's not resetting Diavolo's death to 0 because death isn't an action you take most of the time, right? Because Diavolo isn't even dead. He's not dead. He's being kept alive, but he's going through the experiences of death, and he's dying in these drastically different ways. But he's alive, right? And he probably survived the universe reset in Part 6. We might see him in JoJo lands, for all we know. He's probably still alive. He's just experiencing situations again and again and again and again because he can no longer escape fate now that Golden Experience Requiem is pulling his will from him. If his will was to escape fate, and you remove that will, and since time is a flat circle, it's all going to come back to bite you. Right? Like, it's... Sure, you can interpret it as he's like resetting death to 0, but I feel like that's way too shallow and way too unnecessary for all the hype and the mystery surrounding like Golden Experience Requiem stand. I feel like the reason why we don't have any specific descriptions outside of the initial return to 0 ability, right? Because that I can't deny that that's just how the stand works on a basic level, but just the basic, like the quote unquote death loop is not directly tied to return to 0. And the reason why it's not in the stand description is because it's specifically suited for a specific purpose. In the manga, the arrow leaves Golden Experience. In the anime it's different, but it's writer's intention, you know. Same for like the Scorpion not killing Diavolo when he's mushed it. It's just writer's intention. Adapted or not, it's what the writer chose to put into it, right? So, sure, maybe if we saw Giorno in Part 6, or if someone has this, or if like he somehow survived Part 6, which he might have, although I believe he's split up amongst Dragono and Jodio, we don't know, right? He may have just an upgraded version of Golden Experience without the stand arrow. I mean, because the anime, we don't know. There's so much about this character, about this stand, and about this part that we just don't know, and it's up for debate. It's up for discussion, and people refuse to because they want to have media. They want to have shows where they can just sit back and just stare at the screen and have their brain go numb. And then those same people will make takes like, I mean, this is canonically happening to Diavolo right now. You know, this is canon. If no one said that it was an infinite death loop, no one would be making that joke. It's a bandwagon joke. It's shallow, and it doesn't make sense in the context of the scene, or in the context of the entire ending of the part. It doesn't work when you stress test the theory. It doesn't make sense. You know, I'm probably not gonna make too many other videos like this. This has just been on my mind for like a while, especially with I worked at like a book factory, so like I'm like just looking at a bunch of books, looking at a bunch of manga, and I'm just thinking about JoJo's recently. So I just wanted to come up with like a very long rant video and just talk and get shit off my mind. So yeah.